I, 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 I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it and burned that. Man, the way that I live don't concern that. Man, we gon' have to settle this another way.
This is Tim Baldoff-Lenchen reporting for Your World News. We're out here today on April 8th, 2013 at the Label GMO Foods rally outside the FDA in College Park, Maryland. And I'm here with Rika today. Rika, could you tell us a little bit about why you're out here today?
Hi Tim, yeah, we're out here today at the FDA. We're here to send a message to the powers that be that are in charge of keeping our food really safe, and we're here to talk about how unsafe GMOs are and how if you're going to put GMOs in our food, then they ought to have a label. But what's going on right now is we've got companies like Monsanto deeply embedded within our U.S. government who are helping call the shots and write the legislation. So, you know, we're here to say that the people are taking a stand against GMOs for organic integrity, and we're not going to be quiet. We're here to make ourselves known.
That's good. How do you feel about the passing of the Monsanto Protection Act just recently?
Well, the Monsanto Protection Act, you know, the provision within the spending bill, it absolves Monsanto from liability when it comes to municipalities who would like to ban GMOs in their district. It also makes Monsanto not liable when their pollen drifts over into an organic field and contaminates the genetics of the other's crop. So I think it's absolutely despicable that any company should be involved in writing legislation in our country. It's anti-democratic, and it's a clear sign of corruption, a clear line between our company, our government, and this company which has taken over the food genetics and the chemical industry. You know, and it's very dangerous what's going on, and it sets a very dangerous precedent.
Thank you, Rika. I'm joined with Liz right now out here at the Label GMO protest. Liz, could you tell us why you're out here today, please?
Yeah, I'm out here today to bring awareness to this issue and have the conversation, because this is really a conversation we need to start having nationally about GMOs in our food, and then what are we going to do about the fact that they're there and the fact that they're being grown and they're cross-pollinating with our non-GMO foods. We need to have this discussion as an entire culture.
And how do you feel about the Monsanto Protection Act?
The Monsanto Protection Act is horrific. It's a huge disappointment that it passed, that it even got in there to begin with. It's a big blank check for Monsanto, even more so than they already have, and it's just dreadful. From what I understand, though, it does expire in 6 months with the rest of the appropriations bill, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity within those 6 months to mobilize around it to keep it out of any longer-term legislation.
I was just told by another activist here at the rally that there was a 250,000 strong petition signed before the act was passed that was given to President Obama. How did he react to that petition?
As far as I know, all the petitions that have been issued around the labeling of GMOs have been completely ignored by anybody in the government.
Okay, thank you very much. Adam, could you tell us a little bit about why you're out here today, please?
My name is Adam Eidinger, and I'm with Occupy Monsanto. I'm out here because mainly I want this Food and Drug Administration, this building behind me, the people inside that building, to finally do something about the GMO issue, mainly give consumers a choice. Let them choose, let them know what's in their food by labeling genetically engineered foods.
What happens when you get arrested?
And once we've labeled it, then we can track it and decide if it's safe or not.
It all depends on what you do.
And how do you feel about the Monsanto Protection Act that was recently passed?
Which is where I got arrested for.
The Monsanto Protection Act, what really is a travesty of our democracy. It basically takes away any judicial review of GMO crops and allows farmers and the seed producers to continue to sell these genetically engineered crops even when proper environmental impact studies haven't been done. So usually when you have an environmental impact study, you decide after you've done the study if something is safe. And now they're going to say, no, it's safe until essentially proven unsafe. And this is not a really good use of our tax dollars. It's the whole point of these agencies is to prevent food-borne illnesses, and GMOs are a little bit insidious because you might not see the negative health effects for a long time. It may take years to develop evidence in the population that a certain segment of the population who eats a lot of GMOs maybe has higher cancer rates or higher autism in the offspring of people who ate these foods, or allergies for that matter. And if it's not labeled, there's no way to tell if the GMO is causing the food allergy. There's no way of tracking, quote, safe meals. And so when the biotech industry likes to say there's been 3 trillion GMO meals served since they hit the market 15 years ago, what they are not doing is measuring the impact of those meals because it's unlabeled, because there's no way to distinguish it. I contend that they're not safe, that they are simply a power grab by corporations to control the seed supply, to increase the use of pesticides. So, yeah, anyway, my food's digesting, so I'm a little sleepy. It's the afternoon, it's almost time for siesta, but we've been here since early this morning cooking the soup, and people are coming by still to get food, which is good because we have a lot in that pot still.
That's good. So what has been the overall approach of the Obama administration towards genetically modified food?
Well, the Obama administration and the Obama campaign of 2008 are two different things. In 2008, we were expecting the promise to be fulfilled of the president to label GMO foods. And what we've seen for the last 5 years is anything but keeping that promise. And now we're actually protesting an Obama agency for lack of action. So I would say it's going pretty badly.
All right, thank you very much for being out here and for talking to us today.
Thank you for coming and helping to spread the word.
Right on. All right, I'm out here with Tom right now. Tom, could you briefly introduce yourself, please, and tell us why you're out here today?
Yeah, so my name's Thomas Clever, and I work with a group called the REAL Cooperative, which stands for Regenerative Education, Action, and Leadership, based out of Asheville, North Carolina. And we try and educate people around issues like GMOs and come up with creative, positive, story-based actions. And today we've targeted the FDA because of their complicity with genetically engineered foods. And so we've decided to do an eat-in here. It's never been done before. And we came up with the idea to have a giant stone soup following the old Eastern European folktale. And invited people from all over the country to come. I think we got 12, maybe 14 states people have come from, a couple of countries. And everybody brought something for the soup, and we started with a stone, and the stone is representative of the food desert that exists today. Both the desert of a lack of healthy food access and a lack of healthy food education. And so we started with that stone, that metaphorical food desert. We put that in the pot, and people brought their carrots and their onions and their spices and their tomatoes and so many things from all over to make this soup. And everybody here got fed from one pot of soup. We had over 200 people eat from that pot. And we came here because genetically modified foods aren't labeled in the United States. Currently, the citizens in 61 other nations around the world have the democratic right to choose whether or not they will eat genetically modified foods. That is a right that we don't hold in this country, in this bastion of democracy. And it's a right that we believe that we deserve. It's not a right that should be given to us as much a right that we inherently deserve. And so we're calling for that right to come to us.
Thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned the food deserts as well, because that's one of the issues that's been devastating Southeast DC, not too far from us right now, and most often than not affects primarily communities of color in this country. Recently, President Obama has signed the Monsanto Protection Act. How do you feel about that?
I think it's really unfortunate. I feel that it speaks to the problems within our legislative process and within the executive process, but really at the legislative level, because that Monsanto Protection Act was snuck in as a rider onto our national budget. Every once in a while, the president Congress has to push forward a new budget, and the president has to approve that budget. And this was just a temporary budget, and essentially otherwise the government was going to shut down, as they always say. So to prevent the government from shutting down, they came up with this 6-month-long budget, and right at the last minute, the Monsanto Protection Act was snuck in, having nothing to do with the national budget whatsoever. And yet still he was able to be a rider on that bill. And so for Obama, if he was going to continue the funding of the government for the next 6 months, he was actually forced. He was duped into signing that. Now, some have said that he could have struck that as a signing statement from that law, and we all 250,000 comments were submitted to him the day before he signed that into law, and unfortunately he didn't follow through and strike that. He had the option to sign that, but it kind of really comes back to Congress. Congress, who has been funded too often by biotech like Monsanto, and specific Congress members that wrote that Monsanto Protection Act with the help of Monsanto and slipped that in. So we've got 6 months. Right now, that's going to be active for 6 months. We've got to make a lot of noise in the next 6 months. We've got to use that as a tool. And as a result of that, the March Against Monsanto has popped up. And now we see people signing up to lead marches, not only in the United States, in many cities around the United States, but also all over the world. Because it's not only United States citizenry that is fighting Monsanto, it's the world citizenry that's fighting Monsanto. In India, in the last 18 years, 270,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide as a result of Monsanto's practices. Monsanto has gone into the rural villages of India and taken over the seed dispensaries and monopolized it so that the farmers can only buy Monsanto seeds. And they're forced to mortgage their farms, mortgage their homes to be able to buy all the chemicals, all the pesticides and the herbicides that go along with those GM seeds, to pay royalties on those GM seeds. And too often, those crops will collapse and they're not able to make enough money. And even if all their crops are sold, it costs so much in royalties and in those chemicals that they can't even make enough money to live off of and pay back those mortgages. And around the world, we've seen very similar issues. In Africa, it's a very, very big problem in Africa where Monsanto partnered with the Gates Foundation, which many people don't realize, but the Gates Foundation is heavily invested in Monsanto, and after they made huge investments in Monsanto, they came out and supported GM seeds as the answer to feed the Africans. And there's many African countries that are rising up against it, that have banned Monsanto, because they realize that if they lose their seed sovereignty, they lose their national sovereignty, because they will be stuck buying Monsanto seeds and essentially be owned by those corporations. So their entire food source, if you own a food source for a population, you own that population. So it's important that we convey that to people, that right now in our country, our food source is owned by a very small handful of these biotechnology companies. These companies that historically have made chemicals for war. Dow Chemical, DuPont, Monsanto, Syngenta. And so we're organizing, we're doing events, we're exposing the link between the FDA, which is complicit with Monsanto, where currently the National Food Safety Czar of the FDA is a former Monsanto employee, has gone back and forth, what we call the revolving door, between the FDA, Monsanto, and the USDA. Michael Taylor, who's our National Food Safety Czar, is the one that pushed GMOs through without any approval. He came up with the language, the substantially equivalent language, which has been used to justify the lack of any safety testing by the FDA of these GMOs. There's not been a single safety test by the FDA. All the testing is done by Monsanto and the chemical companies that are making these seeds. He also worked at the USDA and got bovine growth hormone approved, which is another genetically modified product. He's gone back and forth, though, between being a 10-year trial lawyer for Monsanto, most recently working before being at the National Food Safety Czar, he was vice president for Monsanto, and he was the chief of lobbying. So, truly, the fox is in the henhouse, and unfortunately, too often, I feel as if the FDA is looking out for corporate profits and for corporate well-being as opposed to the well-being of its citizenry and the health of its citizenry. And so we're asking people to step up in ways like this, in other ways they see fit, and to stand up as citizens, to have their voices heard as citizens, and to push forward legislation, and to push on our government regulators and our president to make definitive national labeling a reality.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
I I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it and burned that.